Welcome, advocates, to another episode of the Lili Inequity Podcast, a podcast that focuses on supporting educators with the tools and resources necessary to ensure equity at their schools. Today's special guest is Liliana Stevenson. So without further ado, Lili, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine. I'm excited for today's topic. This is going to be an interesting one, folks. So make sure that you're tuned in and you're ready to take your notes. Unless you're driving or lifting weights, be careful out there. I'm excited for today's topic. Lili, I'd love for you to start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and what you're currently.
So I am a professional long-term sub. So I pop in and I take leaves. In Illinois, it is a profession. Like you pop in and you are paid a certified wage to cover anything from 3 weeks up. In Ohio, I found out it is not the same. You are paid as a traditional sub. So we're grappling with that. But I'm also a curriculum creator and the founder of Bat for America, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on personal voice and personal boundaries, teaching the sport of cricket in a unique way that kinetically teaches those skills as you're learning the sport at the same time.
Nice. All right. Well, welcome to the show. You might be the first long-term sub that I've had on the show. So congrats.
That's exciting. I could talk about that for days. And if you want to have me on for that, I'd love to talk to you about it.
All right. We'll have to bring it back for another one then. But let's get into it because we're talking about English learners, ELL, EL students. And I don't have that background. I've worked with teachers, obviously, as a school principal, but it's not necessarily my area of expertise. I speak one language, and that is English, and I struggle to speak English sometimes. So I want to start with asking you, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing when it comes to EL teachers?
The first thing is the lack of EL teachers. So for example, in the current role that I'm in, there is one EL teacher for 2 campuses. And so she spends 2 days at one campus and 2 days on the other campus. And there is a rubric that says if child A struggles with A, B, C, D, and E, you can see them for so many hours. If child B has this issue, you can use so many hours. But also what happens is, how does that work into a schedule when you have to be in one building one day and one building another day? And what if someone needs really a lot more than that? For example, in one leave that I had, I was working with a 4th grader who was learning poetic language like alliteration, and she had a 2nd grade reading level. And I had just made arrangements to be able to work with her after school while she sat in the bus line, and then the leave ended. So even though the rubric said she's allowed this many hours, it's like, mate, that is not enough time. And this kid is just going to be set up for, gosh, she's struggling. I wonder why.
You got me thinking, because you said, for example, in your situation, you got a teacher that has to split their time between 2 different campuses. So what happens every other day for those students that don't have that resource available? Are they just left to be on their own? And then does that teacher, when they come back the next day, are they trying to play catch up because the work that was missed the day before? So now they got to do that work and the day. Like, how does that situation work out? I'm curious.
So it just depends. Each school district does it differently. The one that I'm currently in is that there is like a support study hall. So when the professional is not there on campus, then those of us who can just kind of support and say, oh, hey, are you missing this? Are you having struggles with that? There are like math tutors available if math is an issue and the skill is a problem. But unfortunately, as far as the scaffolding, like, it's almost like at one school that I was at, and this is the bonus of being a long-term sub. I've worked in many districts, I've worked in many schools, and so I have seen a lot of different ways of how this is handled. But in one school, they were saying, well, all the classroom teachers need to scaffold. Like, we can't do that. And I'm like, okay, so let's say we have, again, high class load. Let's say we have a medium class load of 25, and you have various language abilities in general. And now you're asking, well, say me, if I were the classroom teacher, to now make a specific lesson plan for an English learner who may not understand, have that vocabulary gap. It's the time. I mean, the system of, we're trying to do the best we can with what we have, but it's really hard when we aren't given the resources to do the best that we can, because we know how to do these things. There are some kids who end up in classes beneath their ability because classroom teachers may interpret the inability to do the work as a disability as opposed to a language difference. And there is a girl that happened in one of my leaves. I was livid. They took her out and put her in isolation with one other kid who had some other disabilities. So she wasn't talking to her peers. She wasn't able to interact, which is what you need when you are learning a language. But it was one of her teachers that's like, well, she's failing. I'm like, really? It's like, so biology, let's talk about the vocabulary level there. Do we know what her reading level is? Do we know what experience she's had? Do we know if she's a heritage speaker, if she was traditionally trained? I mean, there's so many questions that we need to ask. Was your speech pathologist there during the evaluation? Do you come from, and this is a culture thing, from a monolingual, monocultural background, that if you don't understand how difficult it is to learn another language, you just may not have that lens to be able to see that performance.
Yeah. And then that makes a lot of sense. And sadly, that's a challenge that you see is a lot of students where English is not their first language are lumped into IEP 504 situations, and they're all kind of put in that same group. When again, it's not necessarily an issue where there is intellectual challenges. It's just more of there's a language barrier. I'm curious about, I know we tend to lean on Spanish as the primary language for a lot of our students, but there's so many different languages out there. I kind of want to see if you had some thoughts on that. Those who do not speak Spanish as their home language, what are your thoughts?
I think the thing we need to be aware of is that cultural lens, because speaking English is a great way to encourage these kids to speak English. However, they have to be properly scaffolded. If you don't have just that goal to be just a little more difficult so they feel like they can achieve, it's really disheartening. And so I think with the EL teacher going into that and then being able to work with classroom teachers to also scaffold, which is, again, it's the time asking classroom teachers to scaffold. There's a little bit of frustration because their load is already so heavy. It's like, oh, could we add this one more thing? But I have to tell you, with that whole getting thrown in with the IEPs, I took a leave once and I sat in this classroom. It was a co-taught class, and I was like, man, I love this class. I am feeling so comfortable in this class. And I realized, I looked around, 75% of the class was male Latino heritage speakers. And this basically was a step above remedial, this class was. And at the time I was getting my EL certification, I went to my teacher and I said, I'm comfortable in this class because everybody looks like me. But at the same time, I'm like, what's going on here? And she said, well, the standard is 7 to 10% across the board. 7 to 10% of any of your populations may fall into considered a special education, that traditional setting. It's like when you start getting above that, we need to start looking at what are the similarities, what's going on with this particular group of people and why are there so many. And I said, because we have a bunch of heritage speakers who are not traditionally taught Spanish in there. They just listen to it, which means listening to English, the sounds are different, the spelling's different. And I was like, oh my giddy aunt. Wow.
So you got it. So again, I'm not an EL certified individual. So you're going to have to explain to us why you do not have to speak the language in order to be a part of the EL program. Because I assumed if I have Spanish speaking students, oh yeah, you want to get a Spanish speaking EL teacher in that space. So give us a reason why not necessarily you have to have that same language.
Well, the thing is, you can. I mean, it's very nice. In the situation that I'm in right now, I am the only Spanish speaking adult on faculty, and this is a large school. And when a teacher comes in and looks at the understanding of the student, you'll know right away as far as, okay, these are the types of things would we communicate. These are the levels we need to communicate at. For example, my one student that I had at my last leave, who was in the 4th grade, she read at a 2nd grade level, but her speaking was higher. We were able to speak a lot more. Whereas the one kid who had just come from Brazil, we were doing a lot of pictures and a lot of, drawings, hand raised. Can I go to the toilet? So starting, it's just, you meet them where they are, and then you set the bar just a little higher so success can be achieved. And unfortunately, the classroom teachers don't have that. And if they do, anybody out there, I'm excited for you. That's great. Most everybody just has the heavy class loads with all the IEPs and all the everything. And oh, by the way, you need to make sure you're drawing pictures for Johnny over there. And the teacher's like, how am I even going to do that?
That kind of leads me to my next question, Lily, because like you said, there is a shortage out there. And so a lot of us teachers who want the best for our kids, I mean, I've had these conversations with teachers who are stressed out. It's like, I want to help this child. This child has been passed on every year. They're in 7th grade. They're in 8th grade. They get pushed on. They just get pushed on. And now I want to be able to challenge them and high expectations, rigor, all that. I want to do that. But the language is a challenge for me. What are some strategies that you can provide to teachers, educators out there where there isn't that support, those resources? What are some things that we can do in a classroom?
The first thing, get to know your kid. What do they like? Start working on those.
How do we do that?
Well, you just you start off it's going to depend on your level. Is it someone like my kid from Brazil and it's like, pictures. I drew a picture of someone running and he smiled and I'm like, oh, do you like to run? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, he likes to run. Let me incorporate running. I mean, it's 2 or 3 questions of, I know anime is huge. Picture, do you like anime? Do you like sport? Because as soon as you can get that connection, you can build on the vocabulary that they like. And then that encourages, now granted, that's one section of vocabulary, but they can see that you're invested in who they are. And not, oh, you are person A and you are reading at level whatever. I need to get you to whomever. So for example, in my Brazil kid example, 1st grade, we were struggling with taking other people's things.
Okay.
And the classroom teacher said, hey, when you take him, can you incorporate your lesson with that? So his friend, so he's from Brazil. His table mate was from China. I took them both out. What did we practice? Can I borrow your pencil, please? Pencil, grab the pencil. Okay, they were friends. They did this together. We practiced something very simple. Language skills, also. Culture, also. Oh, I'm interacting with a friend. And they said afterwards, the teacher came back and said, he asked, can I borrow your pencil? I was like, it's the little wins on the little things. Sometimes we get so caught up in, and I don't want to knock state standards, but it's like, what box am I ticking? As opposed to what do you need? And as soon as we find out what they need, and then we look at the boxes to tick and say, oh, I can fulfill this need and this box can be ticked, that's where the workaround needs to be instead of the other way around.
You brought up a good point. I've been doing some research on Hofstede. He has his cultural dimensions, and one of the things he talks about in his research was individualism versus collectivism. What I just heard is you had a student that probably comes from a collectivist background, meaning like they're used to like your pencil's my pencil, that's just kind of the background. So it wasn't like the student is trying to be rude or bully or all those. It's just that's the community that they're coming from. And so now you're teaching them, okay, yes, you can take the pencil, but these are some strategies of how to do so. Sadly, a lot of times those students don't get those opportunities. They get sent out of the classroom, they get sent to the office, whatever it is, and they don't get that support that they actually need because it's just a cultural barrier that's there.
When you look at the monolingual, monocultural population, when they are in admin roles, when they are in teacher roles, and I'm not I don't mean anybody to take offense if you're like, well, I only speak English, I'm a fine teacher. That's great. I totally believe you are. It's just the idea of, because there is that lack of experience, not understanding what it's like. And especially, I mean, I've traveled the world with the cricket. I've experienced a lot of things, but being dropped into a country where you are desperately trying to make sense of anything and not even be able to communicate, I'm really struggling with this concept. There's just a void. And it's interesting because the converse is true. Like if you look at, so for example, in Arizona, I was working with a speech pathologist there, and she said, depending on your culture is where you're going to see the importance of language. So she said the issue is that a lot of times when you're in a high EL population, the admin are so hyperfixed that they're afraid that they're going to be putting this kid perhaps in an IEP and shouldn't. And so there's a lot of kids who should have those accommodations that aren't, because they're saying, oh, but we don't want to put them in there if it is a language difference. I guess glasses you're wearing, you'll see what you need to see. But just, I don't know, just love kids. That's really love kids, get to know kids, and they'll know that you want to help them. And they're usually 9 out of 10 saying, okay, I'll go with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the other piece I would add to it is just have an asset-based mindset in general. If you're coming from a deficit, oh, they're only reading at a second grade, this is 10th grade, or oh, they don't have the skills, they don't know. Like, if that's what you're leading with,
Yeah,
then that alone right there is not setting the student up for success.
Well, and that's the bilingualism. And I actually wrote a paper on it. It's on Academia. I can send you the link. Because it's that English focus, right? You must speak English. Yes, absolutely. But could we look at, like, for these heritage speakers, for example, and we'll take the Spanish population, how many classes are there that are teaching Spanish grammar, Spanish literature, that these kids who just grew up speaking Spanish, they have a whole vacuum of knowledge because they were not traditionally trained in their native language. And when you put that in, as soon as they start making sense of that native language, the English comes like this. Like, it's crazy because they understand, because the words that they're using, they see the patterns and they understand, and then they're able to apply that learning to English. And then they are truly bilingual. And how much of a blessing is that to our country that is so vast and there are so many languages? If we could have so many certified bilinguals to help bridge that gap, I mean, come on.
It'd be amazing.
It's a gift. It's a skill.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I know, mate. I know. I'm preaching to the choir. I know.
I'm not the one you got to convince, but I'm with you. Okay. All right. So this is kind of in the same lane, but a little different. And I want to get your take on this because we've been talking about it, and let's just say we're defaulting to general population of class. Okay. We haven't brought up honors and advanced classes. So
I can talk about that for days. But yes, let me listen.
Let's go this direction now, because again, we're talking about EL students. Are they? Because people have asked me, do you think the student can do an advanced placement class? Do you think the student can take an honors class? So what are your takes? How do you respond to someone that might ask those kind of questions? And what is maybe your experience when it comes to EL students in advanced classes?
Well, I loved how you brought up, if you lead with, well, they can't, it kind of almost colors the question. It's like, well, okay, if you're asking what are the concerns, I've got a kid right now who's brilliant. And the language difference, it just hasn't been handled well, quite honestly. And it wasn't till the job college fair that I was pulling things up. I'm like, oh, you know what college do you want to go to? And she looked at me and said, I can go to college. I was like, yeah, well, why not? And she's like, oh, I didn't ever think I could. No one told her she could go. They just figured, oh, well, here you are, you're struggling. We'll be happy to just, move you on and be happy with that. And so we're in the process of getting a pathway for her so that she can continue studying. The answer is yes, absolutely. Take a look at where they are, scaffold that up. You've got brilliant kids with a brilliant gift. And if you want to talk about problem solvers, they're all problem solvers. Why? They've had to figure out a way to get through the trials that have been handed to them based on, I'm living in a language that it's not my first one. I got to make this happen.
So should we encourage students to take advanced placement classes?
Yes, because the issue is, like, for example, let's take my class of male heritage Spanish speakers. If they're in remedial English, okay, that sets them up for what? Are they going to say, okay, next year you're going to take English honors? No, they're like, wow, this group of kids, they just can't get this. We're going to give them the next thing. And so when it comes to ACT, college placement, all that stuff, they are automatically filtered out. They don't have that because of the misplacement in the schools. Like, the ripple effect is huge.
Okay. I like that. Thank you for clarifying that. So if anybody asks me, should I encourage students? Personally, in certain situations, especially when it comes to like dual credits, for example, like I feel like it's gatekeeper. A lot of people will only just invite certain students to take their dual credits or the advanced placement class. They don't necessarily offer that or invite all students. I've seen that a lot, and I just don't want our EL students to be part of that group that doesn't even know that these classes exist or aren't encouraged to take these classes. So I appreciate your take on this.
Hey, no worries.
Okay. All right. So if we have some folks that are interested, because you said there's a shortage. I know each state has its own regulations and all those different things, but generally, what what's some of the things that a person that wants to have that certification, what are some things they need to be working towards?
The best thing is to check your community college, because there are a lot of community colleges who offer the certification. I was teaching at a school once, and the department had asked me if I wanted to join a cohort, and it was at a really super nice university. And I looked at the price tag and I was like, and do I have to pay that? And he's like, well, yeah, it's a deal we have with them. And I was like, oof. I was like, mate, I appreciate that, but this is not. And he's like, can I tell you a secret? I was like, sure. He's like, the community college has a great program. And the price difference was just mind-blowing. So I went there. I mean, it's not, and it's not one of those things where you have to take so many time, especially at a community college. Take a class here that fits, take a class there. You will at some point, of course, have to do your in-classroom teaching, but it's very accessible. It's very doable. And then with programs like the TOEFL and the TESOL and all of those, it's very, I don't know, it's almost like geared towards perhaps those who are interested, maybe almost like on a hobby basis. Oh, this would be interesting, because then you could teach classes at night. It could be a side gig. I mean, one of my friends, she's from Ireland. I love listening to her, but that's it. She taught EL classes at night at the community college. So you could do that. It's very doable.
If I only speak English, can I be an EL certified instructor?
Absolutely. One of the interesting things, though, is that as you do that, you're going to know English better. The grammar class that I took, she had 10 questions. Give me an example of the present progressive tense. Give me an example of the past perfect tense. But because I speak other languages, I was able to do that. And there are people afterwards turning the test, are like, I have no idea. What is that? It's eye-opening to understand, wow, our language is super complicated. I can understand why people are like, man, I don't want to learn English. This is terrible.
So then do you encourage our English teachers, our ELA teachers, to enter into the space, or do they get an advantage, if you will, because of that, or just you recommend it to anybody?
Well, it's interesting because in the ELA, a lot of that is analyzing literature. It's writing. It's all of those things. So in the writer, there is that grammar stuff. If you're thinking like maybe middle school where you're taught some of those things, again, depending on what your passion is. I know English teachers have a lot of extra work, because I know that some of the math teachers, which I actually appreciate, they have the programs. It's like, oh, go ahead and do 10 questions on whatever. You put it in, it grades it for you, whatever. Oh, here's 25 essays. And you're like, here I am. But I mean, they absolutely can. I love education. I say, keep going to school. It will open your eyes to a lot of different things and will help you be a better teacher overall. Anyone.
Okay. I'm with you on that. Listen, I'll tell you this. I've learned a lot, Lili, with this conversation in regards to EL. And again, I don't have that certification, but now first of all, I didn't think I was eligible to have a certification, but you've debunked that myth already. So thank you for that. Who knows? Maybe one of these days I'll go for it. I just, once you get a PhD, it's like, man, school again? Like, oh.
Man, you totally do it. Well, in your spare time. Just
don't make me laugh. She said spare time. Maybe one day, maybe down the road, especially with DEI issues and everything going on. Who knows? That might have to be a backup plan before I go to Uber. But as far as I know, at the end of the day, this has really been helpful. I'd love for you to share any final words of advice to our listeners out there.
I think as teachers, as educators, we love our kids. Like that's just the big takeaway. And these kids who just who have that language difference, they need it too. And so just, I guess take off the box lens and put in the who is this kid lens, and it transforms the experience.
Remember, they're human beings at the end of the day. Like they're people. I know sometimes we get so bogged down with, like you said, state standards and state testing and all those things and all these requirements. Forget that they're humans. And just, again, like you said, imagining what it's like for this individual to try to navigate the world, and the language that's spoken primarily is not as familiar for them. Plus they have their own thoughts. And so they're thinking in multiple languages. It's just that at 16, maybe 8 years old, those things can be a challenge. So I love those words of advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Well, if we have some folks that want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you online?
I would say go to my Instagram, World Cricket Girl. You'll find me there.
Okay. And tell us, I don't know if you shared about your organization. give us one more reminder as far as your organization, the cricket. We were kind of talking about it offline, so
no, it's good. So it's called Bat for America. No website yet, but the program, the curriculum website is empoweredcricket.org. Again, and you can message me at my Instagram. But the state of Illinois has accepted it for continuing education credits for teachers who live in Illinois. So you can come to me. I have a very special price because I know we don't have any money. So I'm happy to, do that. And then because I'm associated with Illinois, I can get those PDs set, and you're right as rain.
All right. Well, Lili, it has truly been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.